this is that type. What can we learn? Like somebody, let's talk about your book specifically.
Okay.
First, what could somebody learn who maybe doesn't know their team's Enneagram type, but by starting to see some of these characters represented in a book like How to 9 Ways to Die, what can we take from characters being represented by the types? How can we apply that to real life?
Well, I think if you can start to notice certain types in fiction or, even in movies and TV, if there's a certain type that's a person that shows up over and over and they're always annoying you, even in like a TV show, they don't necessarily annoy other people, but you feel like this is an annoying thing that I keep seeing, or a certain kind of character that I just don't relate to, then there's something there that like you need to understand, because those kind of people exist in the world and we have to, work with them and deal with them. And so I think it can be like really helpful to kind of dig in and start to understand why people are acting the way they are. And then once you can start to see, that maybe they're not evil or wrong all the time, like there's just some different motivations, then you can start to, understand them better and be a kinder, better team.
Yeah, and even I won't have any spoiler alerts, but there was kind of a ruthless character in your book, one of them. And it's like, oh, when you kind of understand their
Mhm.
type, then you can start to kind of put the pieces into like what might have happened in their past or how their past affected them. And then, like you said, it's like, don't love this current behavior, but I can understand and have some empathy for it.
Right, right. Yes, if we can find empathy for every character, then we can find empathy for the people in our lives.
Yeah. Did you by chance, this is like a random question, but I know that there are classes out there being taught, and maybe you might even be teaching one, I don't know, about how to use the Enneagram in character development. So I had a fellow Enneagram coach. She's actually a licensed therapist, but she on her in as a side business, I guess, teaches authors how to leverage the Enneagram types to create believable characters.
Oh, that's
Have you done
cool.
anything like that?
I have not. I mean, I did write the book that way, but
Yeah, you absolutely did. That's why I asked.
no, I haven't taken a class, but I think it's such an interesting idea, because I think when I read a book that I have trouble relating to a lot of the characters, and you start to realize, oh, everybody in this book is driven by the same thing. Like
Mm.
they're all, because that's what the author was driven by. Like as a 9, I could write a book where everyone's just avoiding conflict all the time, because that makes sense to me. But an 8 would read that book and be like, what is up with all these people? Like, I don't get it. So it's important to understand how other people think. And the Enneagram's a great tool as far as something specific motivating your characters, apart from what you would do in that situation.
What a great point. Yes. Like, what a great benefit as an author to be able to have some like really practical, like a really practical tool or framework to look outside of yourself and like kind of check yourself.
Yes.
Like, how am I writing this? Is it all
Yeah.
my perspective? We were talking a little bit before we hit record that one of the favorite things that my workshop members will just love is I'll go through the types and then just for fun, I'll throw in like an Avenger example. And it's just so fun and people love it, even if you're not a huge Avenger fan, because I think it helps, put something, a picture of a
Yes.
visual to all of
Yes.
this information. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
know you have some other character examples for us. I'm curious if you would be willing to go through some of those
Yeah,
for,
we'll
or
just
maybe
do a
all of
couple
them.
from each number,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk about our ones. And so ones want to do the right thing. And I think, if you think about superheroes, I think Batman is more,
Mm,
you'd think most superheroes are twos, but Batman is more about making the world a better place, right? Than helping people. I don't think he's not helping people. He wants to make the world a perfect place and get rid of the bad guys. I also have Ned Stark from Game of Thrones.
okay.
He's a definitely, he does the right thing. It doesn't, well, no spoilers, but doesn't always work out for everybody. But Woody from Toy Story is a 1.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I have Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. So he's definitely a 1. He's trying to do the right thing, a lawyer, trying to do the right thing.
Okay,
Okay, so
total 1. Oh, go ahead.
total 1. Okay, so should we move on to 2?
Well, I want to get your opinion on something.
Yeah.
So I also have a type 1 that sometimes I'll use as like an unhealthy example,
Oh, I love
as
that.
Thanos. Because I always thought
Okay.
he was of the Avengers, or in the Avenger movies. Are you familiar with him?
Vaguely. I'm not as
Okay.
a big an adventure person.
He is like the ultimate like bad guy. And I
Oh,
always thought he was an 8, and maybe that's not fair to our 8s, but he has this really big, like
yeah.
commanding
Yeah.
energy, kind of ruthless. But I've noticed that he talks like he wants to destroy the universe and like wipe out half of the population because it's too overcrowded and it needs to be done. And it's like there's a right way to
That's a
do this.
1.
Right?
Yes. That's
Yes.
totally a 1. He's like, we're going to make it better, but you all have to die. We were watching Godzilla. My daughter had it on in the car. So I wasn't watching it, but I was hearing it. And it was the same thing. They were somebody, and I don't know the story very well because again, I was only hearing it, but they were going to like wipe out the whole world so that like they could have this utopia with the monsters or something. And it was like, oh, that's a 1, a
That's right.
misguided 1.
Yes,
Yeah.
misguided. Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, just like an example of like the behaviors might look like one way, but then when you really start to listen and pay attention, it's like, oh, they're
Oh, yeah.
behaving badly because of this motive potentially.
Yeah. Yes. And any number can go bad,
Right.
but
Okay,
yeah.
type 2. What do you
Type
have?
2. So that's our helpers, right? So I have Samwise from I think it's Gamgee. I'm not sure how to say it. Gamgee from Lord of the Rings. So he's like the helper. He helps
Okay.
get Frodo to the volcano or whatever, but he's like his like side guy. Hagrid's
Okay.
a 2 from Harry Potter. The fairy godmother from Cinderella is a 2. Snow White, I feel like, is a 2. She comes along and helps the dwarves, even though she's kind of just on the run, but she cleans and cooks for them.
What a great example. The Avenger example that I will give, I'm still kind of playing with it, is like Aunt May sometimes,
Oh,
like for
yes, I can
Spider-Man.
see that. Yes.
And then I was reading, I actually
Oh,
asked,
you know who is it
oh,
too? I think Superman. Is he an Avenger?
he is in the DC
That's well, we're
universe.
crossing over.
We're crossing
I
over
think
here,
he's a 2.
but I love that because I haven't done anything with the DC world. So that's good. We got Batman and we got Superman.
Yeah.
I
And you
also,
said the Hulk was a 9, didn't you? In a
well, okay.
previous podcast, but we're not there yet.
I was going to ask you this. So I have always thought, I've always used him as a type 9 example. And from what I hear, 9s will say, I'm calm, cool, collect, and then, potentially years of suppressing, so that I don't cause conflict. I will erupt and kind of
Yes.
turn into the Hulk. And it's very alarming and
Yeah.
surprising to people. But I asked ChatGPT what he thought the Hulk was, or what they thought the Hulk was. And they said a type 2 because Bruce Banner is like so caring for the group and really like attentive and wanting everybody to get along. And then they said the highway to 8, and it will come out when for the
Oh.
8. So I don't know. I've been kind of playing
Well,
with
I was
that.
thinking he might be a 9 with an 8 wing,
Yeah.
or he could be a 2. But I think it's the same. Well, it's the same thing we were talking about, how 2s and 9s can be
Yeah.
mixed up, And so it really comes down to like the Hulk's inner motivations, and we at the outside
We
can't
don't
always
always
know
know.
for sure.
Yeah, so I
That's
thought that was
funny.
interesting. All right, what do you have for the type 3?
Tiana is definitely a type 3. Tiana the princess from
Oh,
Princess and the Frog.
okay.
She is a worker bee. She's trying to earn enough money to buy her restaurant, and she is such a 3. And Han Solo is a 3.
Okay.
And I also wrote down every career-driven woman from a Hallmark movie. They're all 3s. They're all threes over and over and over
Oh,
again.
that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good and so true. Do you have, just out of curiosity, I'm putting you on the spot again, but do you have a DC example of a type 3?
I don't have it. I only could come up with Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman. So I didn't have a 3. Um, although with Bruce Wayne, you could make an argument for Batman being a 3 too, because he's, a career guy, but he's not. He kind of blows that off, doesn't he? Yeah. So
Yeah.
no, I don't have a good DC for 3.
Yeah.
But I don't think I know any more DC superheroes than those few.
Um, the only reason why I know this is because I live in a house full of boys. So I've just
I have all girls. That's why I know all the princesses.
right. Yes. So, okay. I'm bringing this perspective. What I will say for the 3 is Thor usually, because he's so
Oh,
charming, very
yes.
image conscious.
I see that. Yes.
So he's usually my example for that one.
That's a great one. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What about our 4s? I'm curious what you have for them.
4s. I have Rapunzel, very artistic.
Okay.
Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter.
Okay.
She's a 4. And Kylo Ren from Star Wars. I feel like
Oh,
he's very, in touch with his feelings and kind of very like a feeler. Yeah, I felt like he comes his kind of whole story, and that's an example of a kind like a 4. You don't really think of them going bad, but he kind of comes out of all this trauma, and just he's such a feeler and just doesn't know what to do with all his feelings, so he just goes bad.
that reminds me of Loki, Thor's brother, or adopted brother from
Okay,
the
yep.
Avengers. I have him as a 4 right now, and he's
Yeah,
kind of like gone off the deep end a little bit. Like, you know, I'm defective. I'm never gonna kind of measure up, and then that has like put him down like kind of like pseudo villain,
that
sometimes a
makes
villain path.
that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Um, and in the business world, I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast or not. I might have, but I will also just bring up Steve Jobs. And I know we're talking about characters, but he just is somebody who
Yeah,
strikes me as a 4
yeah.
represented in the business world. Cause sometimes 4s are like, oh, just artists and
Yes.
creative, but it's like, oh no, you can be a leader, you can be in the business world as a 4. And Steve Jobs comes to mind for me in that one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see that.
Okay, what do you have for 5s? This is
5s, we have
interesting.
Sherlock Holmes,
Okay.
Dumbledore. I have Owl from Winnie the Pooh. I love
Oh,
him. Yeah. I put down Yoda and also
ooh, Yoda.
Hermione. But I think you could make a argument that Hermione's a 1 also from Harry Potter. Anyway.
I like having these discussions because it makes you think like, why do I think that they're this type? And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, hearing somebody else's like, well, it could be a 1 because of this. And you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
hadn't seen that in them.
Well, what's funny to me when I was trying to diagnose her specifically was because, all the books and all the knowledge makes you think like 5, obviously. But she also always wants to do the right thing. And what's funny to me is that my husband is a 5, but he's got a lot of 1, like he can sometimes come off as a 1. And so I think there is something to that as far as like a 5s and 1s. There is something there as far as like you said with the 2s and the 9s and the 6s and the 9s. I think there's another kind of connector there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's see, the 5, the one that I will usually bring up for the Avengers is Doctor Strange.
Okay.
It almost like he's like he has some arrogance with his competence and his expertise, especially back in his like surgeon days before he became Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
But then I was also thinking of Jane Foster, who is Thor's girlfriend,
Okay.
the mortal
Okay. Yeah.
girlfriend.
Uh-huh.
And she is like this really smart, intelligent scientist and thinking of inventing things. And then I thought of her in the latest Thor, like she
Mhm.
has superpowers, and
Oh,
becomes
fun.
Thor like. And I was like, oh, that's like that 5 stepping into their 8 growth arrow
Yes.
and getting
Yeah, that makes
powerful.
sense.
So that's how I think about that one.
I think that works totally.
Um, okay, we got what about type 6? I know
Type
this could span
6.
with all the
So I
different
have
ways 6 shows up.
sixes are tricky. So I
Yes.
was having a hard time kind of nailing down sixes because they're more, for me, they're harder to see from the outside because I don't know why. There's nothing kind of that stands out, you know? I don't know. So I had Russell from Up because he's prepared. He's like, the Boy Scout. It's like super prepared. That's very six. I had Piglet because he's always so worried about everything. Poor Piglet. And then I had Mulan. Uh, I don't know why. She struck me as a six. Her fighting for her family and
Yeah.
going to great lengths to, protect them. I don't know. Those were
I
my
could
three.
see it. I could
Yeah.
see that. And sixes can be tricky because their outward behavior, I think, has the largest spanning variety
I think,
with
yes.
that fight, freeze, or flight. Um, Presenting how they might like handle fear. Those are good. And I like your Milan example because it's like, well, not all sixes are just sitting around like
Yeah.
worrying.
Yeah.
Like you can also be powerful and use that fear to
Yes.
fuel you.
Yes. Yeah. That's true.
I don't I have a hard time with this one too in the Marvel universe. And I don't know if you know or if listeners will know Gamora, the green woman from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
then I also have the oh my gosh, the Black Widow.
Oh,
Um
okay.
and
Yeah.
they both had kind of traumatic childhoods and that I think like caused a lot of worry, but I don't get the I need to be strong and powerful like an 8. It's almost like self preserving and then also
Hmm.
making sure their teens are
Hmm.
safe and okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd be curious if listeners have another thought on that.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what I have right now for
Well, that
those.
makes sense. And you said they both had traumatic pasts, and I think sometimes that can lead to like a severe desire for like safety.
Yes.
So that makes sense to me. Uh
Okay, so I'm selfishly curious about what do you have for 7?
Sevens, I have Fred and George Weasley from Harry Potter. I have Peter Pan, and I have Joy from Inside Out.
Oh, good one. I feel like Peter Pan could be the ultimate like average stereotypical 7.
Yes, yes, he's your poster boy, I think.
Like I never want to grow up. Yes, the poster boy for the 7. Oh, so good. I used to think Iron Man was a 7. I've moved him over to an 8, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But I
Okay.
now have Scott Lang, Ant-Man.
Oh,
Um,
okay, yeah.
he's just so
He's just
like
fun.
he's so happy. It's like everything's gonna be okay. I just watched the latest Ant-Man like last week, and he was like, everything's okay, everything's gonna be okay, everything's gonna be okay. And like they're in the worst possible situation ever. And he's like, it's gonna be okay,
He's
it's
like
gonna be okay. Yeah. And
7.
so I see that. Yeah. And just totally kind of avoidant of the reality of emotions, hard emotions, or difficult situations. Um,
Yes.
I think Star-Lord, what is his name of Gardens of the
Oh, yeah.
Galaxy? Chris Pratt
Yeah.
is
7.
probably a 7 too.
I think so too. Yeah. Uh,
Okay, what about 8 characters?
Eights, I have Princess Leia. I think
Okay.
she is an 8. I think she's a strong 8. Rhett Butler and Elsa. Those are my 3
Ooh,
powerful 8s.
Elsa.
I like
What a good
Elsa.
one.
Yeah.
I love that you have some women on there.
I know, because I think sometimes I tried to get a man and a woman for each one because some of them I think can come off one way or the other, but that's of course not true. So
Yeah, that's so true. I really like it when there's like a stereotypical or a non-stereotypical type that's willing to
yeah,
share. I have a friend whose brother he was in the Marine Corps, heavy military background, like very, man, what you would think of as like manly man. And he identifies as a type 2. And he's
interesting.
just now starting to like be open to the Enneagram, but I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh, I would love to to talk to him.
Yes.
Because I think you don't ever get that image. I don't think when
Yeah.
you think of a
Well,
type
and
2.
I think too, like if you think about military, like that makes perfect sense because they are helping like the world, you
Yes.
know? But I think people think of them like, oh, well, they're probably an 8 because they're strong and
Right.
tough, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. So fingers crossed one day he might be open to being on the
He'll do it.
podcast.
He'll do it.
I think I mentioned I had Tony Stark, Iron
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
just kind of,
That makes sense.
we all kind of know him. So I have him for my 8. All right. And then last but not least, what do you
The
have for type
9s.
9 characters?
Harry Potter, Kristoff, Dorothy, from The Wizard of Oz, and Cinderella.
Oh, what a
Yeah.
great example.
They're
Um,
all they're all fun,
oh,
easygoing
yes,
characters.
Cinderella is a great one. I hadn't thought about that one. And I love that you're adding in like the Disney princesses because, yeah, I don't always think about that. I had put the Hulk on here for my type 9 as a Marvel
Yeah.
character. I also had on here the Black Panther.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, he tends to be, even though he's like, strong superhero,
Mhm.
I think he also has a lot of the 9 qualities of like very steady, able to see all sides kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know.
I can
I'd be
see that.
curious again what
And I like to
people
see
think.
like the
Yes.
strong 9, not just sitting back doing nothing.
Right. Right. Yeah, so, if you're a listener, you'll have to let us know what you think.
Yes, yes.
Find us on Instagram and send us a message, and we're gonna get to how to connect with Kate in just a moment. Or let us know if you have any other examples that we should be, adding to our list. And
Yes.
I mean, I kind of shared and we talked about it, but is there anything else that you would add to just this is really fun, and I think this will be enjoyable for people to listen to and start to think of how they see. But how anything else that we haven't covered about how even just this conversation could be helpful in our understanding people at work?
No, I mean, I think we touched on most of it as far as like just pay attention, to the things that make you uncomfortable or the characters you don't understand. And then if you can start to dig in on why you don't understand them, you're going to have better relationships with those people in your real life.